I'm at Stag Leap Ranch. It's April 11th, 1994, and I'm talking with William John Millburn Feeney, known as Bayman, and Bernarene Stedile, who was born Feeney.
Right.
And Henry Stevenson and I are here for the Kootenay Museum Association and Historical Society. Okay, so this is the property to which your grandfather came and started his home here.
Right.
And it was all wild when he first came?
Wild is right, yes.
Can you describe how he came and why he came? And
all right. He worked for a big timber outfit and real estate outfit back in Ontario. And with the interest that Bailey Groman and the Ainsworth group were generating, they were back east looking for money and this sort of thing. And they sent people like Granddad out to various places to look over the possibilities and state timber claims and this sort of thing. At that time, these outfits sort of looked over an area and were able to state just about what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was involved in that, and that's how he came in here originally.
Mm-hmm. Was Salmo? It was part the Dewdney Trail passed through here, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And was there something at Salmo at that time?
Not more than what should I say, a camping spot.
Right. Okay. All right. So did he have was he alone when he came, or did he have a family?
No.
Okay.
His family was back east. He was strictly alone.
Okay.
And he when he came in over the Dewdney Trail and from the coast, and he began exploring up through here, and he was impressed with the big cedar timber.
Right.
At that time there was cedar here up to 14 feet across in the valley. And
solid timber from here to Nelson.
Mm-hmm.
And all the surrounding areas.
Okay, what year was this?
1882.
Before the big fires in 84, 85?
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, when did he decide to come back and stay? Or did he stay then, when he first came?
No, he came and went several times.
Mm-hmm.
He when he first came in, like, you could only, what should I say, the people who were coming through, like prospectors and trappers and that sort of thing, when they traveled in the summertime with horses, you could only stay for so long until the snow started to come, and you had to make sure that you were able to get out to where you could winter horses, such as Colville or below Bonners or places like that.
For hay and everything.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you had to go to somewhere that was established so that you had hay, or in areas, say down on the Columbia, where they didn't get much snow and this sort of thing, so the horses could winter out.
Right. Okay.
And the trappers who would come, in on snowshoes and so on in the wintertime, and pulling toboggans behind them, or even with dogs and so on, that was a different sort of thing.
Yeah.
But to begin with, any people that had livestock had to get them out, because there were no areas that you could depend on to winter your animals.
Yeah.
Mr. Reith, who came in on the Pond Array, brought in over 80 head of cattle and swam them across the Columbia. And he was told that you could winter animals, you could winter cattle and everything on the Pond Array by some people who had seen the odd easy winter in there, you see. And a bad winter came and he lost everything.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, now these timber limits he was looking for, like the surveying he was doing, was just looking over the country, cruising or whatever. Did he mark out some places that he thought were suitable?
Yes.
And were they subsequently developed?
Yes.
Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, it was just a matter that he sent a report back and the companies acted on it.
Do you know the name of the company?
ERC Clarkson and Son was one.
And they were based in Ontario?
Yes,
okay.
in Toronto.
In Toronto, okay.
Yeah.
And
he also staked out timber limits for himself over toward the boundary country. Toward by that I mean
Phoenix area?
East. No, I shouldn't confuse that. I shouldn't call it boundary country. It was toward the boundary, but it was over toward Corn Creek.
Okay.
Toward the Creston area.
Okay.
And in subsequent years, his brother Jack came out with him. And they made their headquarters here. They eventually built a cabin. And when spring was coming, probably about February or so, they would head out on snowshoes for the head of the Priest River, sometimes toward Oregon, northern Washington. It just depended where the big river drives were, because they had been brought up in that when they were in the East. They were whitewater men, worked on the river drives. And so this was one way of, you did everything and anything and everything to make a living in those days.
Yeah. Okay, so when did your dad homestead or buy or whatever this land here?
Well, it was Granddad.
Granddad, I mean.
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. When it came open for homesteading right after the turn of the century.
Right. And what was his name?
William Feeney.
William.
Right.
Okay.
And his brother was
Jack. Right.
John Feeney.
Okay. And so when did the family come? When did your mother come here, and when did the farm start and all? My grandmother, I mean.
Yeah, she didn't, because she died.
Okay.
Back in Ontario.
Okay.
In fact, that was one reason that Granddad came back out here and settled, because on one of his trips back east, he found that his family was being flooded out by a big timber company back there who had built a dam, and they were flooding the farms, and they wouldn't pay compensation. They just said, too bad.
Too bad, yeah.
Yeah. And several of the neighbors were ill. They had tried to stay there, thinking that if they stuck it out, that this outfit would change their minds and stop the flooding. And they, it didn't work that way. So Granddad assessed the situation, and he had tried to talk to this outfit, and when he found that there was no recourse, got a hold of some dynamite and blew the dam up. And left.
Great.
And they never rebuilt the dam.
Yeah.
Well, in the meantime, His wife died.
When he got back there, this was part of what made him so angry.
Yes.
Because his wife had died, and the two younger children had to go to live with the married sisters, and so anyway, it was a pretty nasty situation.
And what were the names of the children? Bernard
and John were the younger ones.
Okay.
And there were three older sisters, Nan and I should know the names. I forgot.
Did they stay in Ontario?
Yes, they did.
And did Bernard came out here, but did John come out here too?
Bernard and John came out here after Granddad had made his way back through the States and got settled back here.
Right.
Then when things quietened down and he figured they weren't looking for him so actively any longer, he sent for the boys and brought them out here.
Right.
But I should finish the story about when he blew the dam up, I should say. He went across the U.S. border, and it just so happened that he came to a spot where some people had found a body in a river, and no one knew who this person was. So he stepped forward and said, "Oh, I know that man. That's Bill Feeney from Madoc, Ontario." And word was sent back that he had
died,
drowned in the river.
So,
yeah.
But he must have let the family, where the children know, the family
well,
know.
he eventually, after he made his way back to the coast and back into here, he did let his brother Jack know that he was all right.
Yeah.
And so that was, it was after that Jack and his 5 boys came out here. Okay. And they were all, they all worked in the lumber industry. You know, it was just developing, and the possibilities were at that time endless.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
And as more settlers came in, more timber was cut down, and
more mines opened up. They needed the timbers, the railway building.
That's right. It was just a burgeoning country, you know.
Yeah.
And for years, Jack Feeney and his sons all worked on the for Waldie on the Arrow Lakes.
On the Arrow Lakes.
And Jack was woods boss for Waldie for many years.
Okay, Bayman, could you describe what because you worked this land all these years, what you think it was like when your grandfather first took this land? Like you described the big timber.
Well, it was practically all timber. If you...
Mm-hmm. The kinds of trees? You said cedars.
Cedar, pine, hemlock, balsam. What else?
Well, that was mostly
Yeah.
So mostly
tamarack.
Mostly evergreens.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm. And did he think of getting into agriculture, like right from the beginning, or was he like in the sense, was he clearing for agriculture right at the beginning? Did he want to have animals and?
Yes.
Well, actually, they cut the timber and sold it first.
Yes, but that was part of the clearing.
Sure.
Yeah.
The first land that was cleared here was cleared with oxen.
Oh, wow. Where did the oxen come from?
Oh, they got them in here somehow. I don't know.
Yeah. Were there fish in the creek at that time, in the river?
Oh, yeah, there were lots of them.
And animals? What kind of animals did the dad talk about? Were there grizzly bears here?
Oh, sure, there was more grizzly bear than there are now, I think. Although they're increasing.
Uh-huh. And wild cats and sheep and...
No, there were no sheep, there was no elk or moose,
Oh.
but there was lots of deer.
Uh-huh. And like rabbits and squirrels.
Yeah, there was rabbits.
Cougar.
Oh, if you have deer, I guess you're going to have cougar. Did you see any other of the cats, like lynxes, and did he talk about any of those other bobcats or any of those?
Oh yeah, he trapped them. And in fact, we've had to put up with them here in later years too.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to get a sense of the original forest here. You know what it was like.
It was solid timber from here to Nelson.
Right.
In this valley, the sun hardly ever hit the ground. The timber was so thick.
Mm-hmm. And how tall were it? Like big trees? Like you said, 14 feet thick. They must have been really tall too.
Yes.
Were any of those trees still around when you were young?
We got a few at the lower end here.
Uh-huh.
In fact, the biggest tree in that grove is about 10 foot across.
Oh, wow. Beautiful. We're going to go see those, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, tell me about the river at that time. Bernarene was saying it has changed its course quite a bit. Did it used to get all jammed up with fallen trees and make a new path? And
sure.
were there ponds or pools?
There was everything you could think of.
Mm-hmm. And how many acres did your grandfather homestead?
Well, we started out with 800 acres.
Uh-huh.
Granddad, you could homestead 160 at that time.
Right.
And Granddad homesteaded. He took up a homestead, I should say. John took up a homestead, and Bernard took up a homestead.
All adjoining?
Yes.
Aha.
Mm-hmm. And then Granddad bought more land as well.
Okay, so he had this. Did you have any neighbors? Like, did
No.
he have neighbors? It was...
When I was a kid, we were the only people between Salmo and the border.
Right. Wow.
Now there's people living all over the place.
Right. Wow.
Up until 1934, except for, I don't know, what would there have been, about 80 acres or something cleared?
Yeah, something like that.
It was all big timber except for that.
Wow.
That was up till 1934 when the fire came through.
Okay, so then they move here and he starts to log some of it and clear the timber off of it. Did he have his own mill at that time, or did he?
Subsequently, he did.
So they're logging it themselves. Did they have hired people come in, or just the family? All these young men.
Partly the family, partly hired people.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm. When you figure that there were 3, 5, 8 of them from time to time, you know, they were quite a crew.
Right.
All Feeneys.
Right.
All big strapping men.
Yeah.
And they accomplished a lot in clearing and building fences and buildings. There was a big A-frame barn and another log barn just out toward the halfway between here and the road, and a big 2-story log house right here just behind where this house is.
Show them the pictures.
Yeah, I will. And about 1910 was when Granddad built that sawmill at 4 Mile.
Okay, so where is 4 Mile?
You know where the golf course is?
In Salmo?
Airport Road?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. You know where that airport hill is?
Yes.
It was just on the west side of that hill, right at the sort of partly on the hill there.
Okay, so
and that that sawmill had incorporated the first carriage with fluid drive invented by John Bell.
Oh, I was just going to say, was John Bell involved in the sawmills here?
Yeah.
Okay, oh, that's really interesting. He is the sawmill builder for all around here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's neat. And where did the machinery come from? Where did... Ontario, probably.
Well, some of the ore wagon wheels came from a foundry in, let me see, what is it, Winona? North Dakota?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Bell, did your dad work? Bell came in and they built a mill.
Yes, well,
okay.
the family built the mill.
Yeah.
But Bell did the
technology part.
Technology of the carriage.
Right.
Setup and so on.
And how did they power the mill?
Steam.
Steam boiler.
Steam boiler, fed by wood waste.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's how Dad happened to get badly injured.
Oh.
They were moving this boiler, and it was an 8-ton boiler, and it tipped and fell on him and crushed him.
Oh my gosh.
And
was he he was young then?
Yeah, 18. Yeah. And
what happened to him?
Well, they didn't think that he would live. And anyway, he was still breathing, so they put him in a wagon and took him to Salmo, waited till the train came through from Spokane, got him into the hospital in Nelson, and he was tougher than they thought, and he lived.
Wow.
But he really couldn't do much for a long time. In fact, when he managed to drag himself out of the hospital, everybody said, well, you know, you should go to California for your health. That was the idea. So he managed to get on the train to Spokane, made his way to California, and he was down there for 3 years.
Mm-hmm. Trying to get his strength
trying
back.
to recuperate.
Wow.
Yeah.
He lived on goat's milk for 3 years.
Uh-huh. Wow.
And when he made his way back here, and by this time, you know, everything was pretty well established, and he bought a goat from somebody, and that's how he managed to survive for quite a while.
Wow. So the mill was there. How did at 4 Mile?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So was lumber brought from all over to that mill?
No.
No. Okay.
They
were logging right there then.
Yes, they were logging here, transporting it there, and cutting it into lumber and timbers and so on. And you've seen the
Do you know
picture.
what year this is?
Well, this would be from about 1907 to, I'm not sure, 1910, 12, 14. It was before the First World War.
Right. You have a picture of the first load across the bridge of lumber.
Yes.
That you...
And the bridge that was built from the laundromat at Salmo out past where the river is now was built by the Feeneys.
And that was
They had a contract to build that.
Right. And they cut the lumber and built
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Yes.
So your family was very much for Salmo what Buchanan was for Nelson. I mean, you know, his lumber is what basically built the bridge,
Right.
the big timbers, because he was cutting all that big timber at Harrop.
Mm-hmm.
So your dad Grandpa was cutting the big timber from here.
Yes.
The big long, I mean, you look at some of those stringers and you realize those trees must have been
They were tremendous.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so this mill, did they operate that mill for quite a few years at 4 Mile?
Yes. I'm not sure
Wasn't too long.
how long.
3 years or something like that.
Okay.
Well, actually, it was longer than that, Bayman.
Well, maybe it was.
Yeah. But what happened there? There was a sort of a depression before the First World War, and anyway,
things just slowed down around
yes.
here. Development and everything
Yes.
slowed down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well, the mining thing had kind of cooled off too, and then they were trying to get zinc. I mean, Weimar had really boomed after Nelson, and I'm sure, did they supply a lot of timber for Weimar too?
oh yes,
Because it
For
would have
all-
gone in on the train,
all
right?
around.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because having
Yeah.
that Great Northern in from
Spokane.
1894 on, I'm sure that they carried timber and
Yes.
lumber in from there.
Granddad worked on the railway in 1893-94 too.
On that construction?
Yes.
He wasn't involved at all in that Juanita Bridge, was he? Or
Very well could have been,
yeah.
because when the railway was stalled in the it had to be 93, the winter
Mhm.
of 93.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had to finish it.
94.
They had to finish it by Christmas of '93. You know, they had to have it done.
All right.
then-
Well, the year before it was completed, anyway, the construction crews were stalled because of heavy snows,
Uh-huh.
and they were in a camp somewhere between Juanita and Beaver Falls,
Uh-huh.
and the contractors more or less just wash their hands of it, sort of thing. They weren't too
They weren't pushing
concerned
it.
about the men. The men sort of had to survive by themselves, you know.
Wow.
And however it happened, food wasn't forthcoming anyway, and they ran out of food. And this was where Chickadee Brown got its name, because in that camp he was snaring chickadees to put in the pot.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, Granddad snowshoed out and shot a couple of deer, and he pulled them in on a toboggan, and he took one deer. He supplied the camp with some meat, and then he took a deer down to, it would probably, the nearest town would be, what was the town?
Marcus?
No, the town that grew up
Yeah.
when the railway was
Boundary,
going
Washington?
through.
Boundary,
what it was?
Washington? On
It
the
was-
other side.
It was
yeah.
a nefarious
Really
place.
wild.
Really wild.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I think that was the nearest place. But anyway, he took this, he tobogganed this meat down there and traded it for flour and sugar and coffee and, some supplies that they needed badly. And it was starting back, and the sheriff arrested him for trading game for illegally anyway. And justice was pretty quick then. They brought him right up in front of the judge, and they read the charge, and the judge said, "What have you to say for yourself?" And Granddad said, "Well, we have a camp full of men who are starving to death." And he said the game was there, and he said, "Do you think it's really so wrong for me to trade meat for supplies that are desperately needed?" And I guess he was eloquent enough. The judge said, "Case dismissed." So
Right.
he went back with the supplies to the camp.
Wow. Okay, so were ties cut for the Great Northern Railway along here too? It just struck me. They must have been cut in these
Yes.
mills too. Oh, they must,
Yes.
yeah. Were there other men in the lumber
Ties-
business in the
ties-
Salmo Valley?
Ties were not cut in a mill at that time. They were hand hewn.
And we've got pictures of ties stacked, thousands and thousands of ties stacked when they were building the Crow's Nest Railway. You know, just like, you can believe how many trees it would have taken to cut those ties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were whole areas denuded
Yeah.
For tie cutting.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, now 1884, 85, there were a lot of fires. Because everyone who came through this country describes the fires. Do you remember your father talking about any forest fires? Grandfather?
Oh, yes.
Father?
Yes. You know...
I remember Russell Fletcher told me about riding in the train through a fire in the Salmo Valley at one point.
It would be the stagecoach from Sheep Creek.
Oh. He just said it was really incredible
yes.
driving through this fire.
Yes. He and his mother was cooking on Sheep Creek, and they got in the stagecoach with drawn by the horses, and they just made it through the fire. Everybody was choking on the smoke, including the animals. It was touch and go.
Was this ever burned here? Was there ever a fire on your land?
In 34, they let a fire get away on them out in Elway, and it cleaned the whole valley and us with it.
Oh, wow.
We lost everything.
Your home and everything?
Sure.
The home, the barns, cattle, all the pigs, chickens, whatever. We just managed it out with a couple of horses, and how it happened, Dad and Bayman were here. We had a house at the other end of the place, like this house, and Dad and Bayman were haying on the meadows here, and all of a sudden the sky went dark, and here was a pall of smoke coming across the sky, and anyway, Dad had borrowed a truck to load the hay on, and he was working for a logging outfit for Campbell's, and they just abandoned what they were doing and tore up to the house at the other end of the place, and by the time they got there, the fire was starting to crown over the whole valley. You know where you start up the Skyway? And the valley is really narrow? Well, the house was up on the bank there, and barns and so on. And there were great chunks of bark, like 2 or 3 feet across, flying through the air, and sparks, and they could just see the wind fanning the flames.
Wow, terrifying.
Yeah. And
where did you go? Where did you escape to Salmo?
Yeah.
Has Salmo been burned at all?
Well, it was lucky that it wasn't burned, but they just backed the truck in under the porch and threw what they could on it, and headed out the road for Salmo as fast as they could go.
We had to go right through the fire.
Ooh.
It wasn't easy.
And losing all your animals and everything?
Yeah.
Oh. Wow.
We had to come back and start from scratch. All you could get was $6 a thousand for saw logs delivered to the mill at the junction. Fence posts for 6 cents loaded on the cars in Salmo. You didn't make much money.
Wow.
And you...
no insurance, probably.
No insurance.
No compensation of any kind.
No compensation.
Wow.
No nothing.
That
Anyway,
must have been just devastating.
it was.
When you read about some people, just getting burned out totally, it must have been really something.
Yeah.
Wow.
And when they had to come back and log that timber, it was terrible.
And they had to do it to make them money? Or,
Yep.
oh. Let me turn this off for a minute. Turn it off.
better to get going.
The only reason that Salmo was saved, it burnt right close to Salmo. The only reason it was saved was because the wind changed.
Wow. Amazing.
Otherwise it would have been a terrible disaster.
Right. Huh.
But
so going
when they came back to salvage the timber, of course this was in the days before chainsaws or anything.
Right.
And you had to rub this timber off with a crosscut saw, bucket to length with a crosscut saw, skid it with horses, load it with horses, and transport it to the mill at South Fort. The reason the mill at South Fort didn't burn, they got a forestry crew in there with a pump, and Sutcliffe, that just passed away. What was his first name? Anyway, Joe manned that pump, and he was a real expert at it. He could change hoses, and run to different parts.
Keep the water going.
Yeah, and it was really due to his efforts and the help of a couple of more guys that were there that they managed to save that mill at South Fort.
They had a
Campbell's mill.
steam pump for the sawmill. It used to break down every day, and she run wide open there for several days, never broke down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Whose mill was at South Fork?
Beach Campbell's.
Oh, yeah. I remember.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we have some pictures of it. But it was, this was beautiful parkland one day and
A black mess.
2 feet of ashes the next.
Yeah.
And those blackened trees were all that you had to salvage.
Right. So they
Yeah.
had to be cut, and they had to.
Yeah.
Be-
So Dad and Bayman came back here, put up a tar paper shack just up here, and went from there. And we
And of course, I
Well,
guess you'd be walking around the property finding remains of this and that all the time.
yeah.
Oh, jeepers.
Yeah.
So where were you at this time?
We, Mom and my sister and I were in town in Salmo.
You used to
And,
rent somewhere to live, and
Yeah,
yeah.
that's right. And we stay there for 2 years, Bayman?
Oh, you
Before?
just stay there the winter.
Oh, just the winter.
Yeah.
And then we came back out to the,
Acre, yeah.
yeah. Because I was only 2 when that happened.
So let's go back to your grandpa and the mill that he had in Salmo, at 4 Mile.
4 Mile.
Yeah, and then so this takes us up to just before the First World War. So then
2 miles again, not 4 miles.
Yeah, 2 Mile actually.
2 Mile. Okay.
Yeah, 4 Mile is where Sheep Creek comes down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's 2 Mile.
Okay. So
2 miles from Salmo.
did he take down that mill and move it, or did he sell it, or what happened to the mill?
Sold it, I think.
Sold it.
Yeah.
And then what? Do you know what else he did? Like what during the First World War and afterwards? How long did your grandfather live? When did he die?
He died in the 20s.
So did he keep working all those
Oh, yes.
years?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Died with his boots on.
Yeah, right. He farmed here, and they used to have a market garden, and they had a great big root cellar and so on, and they used to supply a lot of the hotels and so on in Salmo, and the mine camps and this sort of thing. Supply them with meat and in the meantime he did packing and rawhiding and trapping and
everything.
And
timber cruising. When the Great Northern started a fire, that was just above Salmo, I guess, Bayman. You know, like it was always a danger when the steam engines went through, that fires would start. And it was Jim Hearn's place, I believe, that caught fire and was damaged. So they had a court case. He got a lawyer and took the Great Northern to court. And Granddad did the cruising on that. And, you know, it was various jobs like that. And he used to work quite often for the Bank of Montreal. They ended up with a lot of timber stands and so on. You know how banks do, lend money and and they used to call on him to do the cruising and so on. But
he kept his oar in with that all along.
Yes.
During this trial, why this
lawyer
asked the old man what kind of a timber cruiser he was. Oh, he said a kind of one. And the judge had come from the same area that Grandpa Feeney had come from. And he said, Mr. Feeney, he said, you tell that man you're an A1 timber cruiser. But he said, I knew you when you worked for the Gilmore Lumber Company. And if you weren't a good cruiser, you didn't work for Gilmore.
That's great.
See, the lawyer was trying to
make it sound like he didn't know his business.
That's right.
Yeah.
He was trying to discredit him as a competent witness, you see. So then they got on with the case.
Right.
And the judge was getting a little fed up with this shilly-shallying around.
Right. So now let's go to your own father. Okay, so he worked with his dad.
Yes.
And until he was hurt.
Yes.
And then he went away to California.
Yes.
Got better.
Yes.
Came back, and then what did he do?
Well, the same.
And everything.
Anything and everything.
Right.
Everything from rawhiding to freighting ore in the summertime. The winter, the rawhiding was done in the wintertime. And the freighting ore, the mines, of course, were opening up, and he worked on the roads and he did a lot of packing. Had his own string of pack horses, often in
Get to the end of this tape. To turn it over.
He and his brother did quite a bit of freighting of ore. They packed. They rawhided the first ore out of the Nugget Mine on Sheep Creek, and anything that there was to do. This is what they were engaged in.
There's a picture of rawhiding from the Nugget Mine. Is that him? Is he in that picture?
I think that he might have been in the picture, but the Leahys and the Feeneys, Jack Mulholland, were all involved in the rawhiding. But Dad and John were the ones that started it, and then as they had more ore to move, then the other outfits came in.
Okay, well we were just talking about horses, so let's continue about talking a little bit about the horses, because you were saying that they needed horses to log with and horses to haul with. And did he have a lot of horses?
Yes.
Or did he get them from a livery stable in Salmo? Or
No, they had their own horses.
Okay. Can you talk about the horses, the two of you, a little bit? And the whole thing with looking after them and where he got them and all that?
Well, I think most of the work horses, unless they were raised here, but the first ones would have been brought in on the railway and the boats and so on from Revelstoke, from the main line. A lot of horses that were brought in here to work in the woods and so on, from around 1910 and in that era, 510 and so on, when they really needed a lot of horses, were brought in wild from the prairie. There were horses that had never hardly had a rope on them until they were caught at 5 or 6 years old. People raised herds of them, and they ran out in big grain fields and pastures and what have you until they got around to picking them up. And they herded them into the railway stockyards and loaded them in cars and brought them out to this area. And that's how a lot of the big workhorses came in here.
George Lambert remembers when he was a young boy going with his dad, and the man from Nelson Transfer was there too. A big load of horses had come in Nelson on the train, and they went down and they sort of bickered over who was going to take which horses, and
that's right.
Kind of bought them between them, and I guess other people were there buying them too, but that was the first time I was sort of thinking about that, how many horses there were. Did you have barns here?
Oh yes.
Yeah, and you grew hay?
Yes. Yeah.
Always.
They were pretty well self-sufficient here. They grew enough feed for their stock and so on, and had big gardens. And
was there a vet around here?
No,
so you had to be your own horse doctor too.
That's right. And many of the people who had been raised with horses were very knowledgeable.
Yeah. How about like tackle and harness? And was there harness makers here and tackle makers in Nelson, like Jake Ludwig?
Yeah.
And
he was one of the main ones, I think.
Yeah.
But there were shoemakers.
Right.
And so on.
Was there a blacksmith that?
Oh
yes.
Or did your dad do his own? Or?
Well, he did that too.
He did most of his own.
But there were several blacksmiths in Salmo and several livery barns and
Weimar.
And Weimar. There were livery barns.
All done by horsepower them days.
If you couldn't move it with horses, you couldn't move it. If you couldn't move it with horses, you set up block and tackle to give them advantage so that they could.
Right.
Some of the timber was so big here.
I was thinking
that when they fell it, when they bucked it up, they had to skid it with horses using block and tackle.
Wow.
And of course you had to know how to set that all up so that you gave your horses advantage.
Right.
And when it came to falling some of the big cedars and so on, they used to take limbs and bed them in the path that the tree was hopefully going to fall in. They would lay.
Okay, so we were talking about logging. Let's go back and talk about logging some of these big trees using horses and so forth. Just start that again.
Okay. Yeah. When they sized up which direction this, one of these huge cedars might go. If a tree is fairly straight up, you can fall it probably 3 different ways. But some of those cedars in the swamp tend to grow one direction, so you can. That's all that you can do. But in order to make sure that they didn't shatter when you fell them,
Right, you do a cushion for them.
had to make a cushion out of branches and so on for them.
Mm-hmm.
And if you wanted to fall one of those big trees a certain direction, you would find a birch, a dry birch, or at least a birch, and you would cut about 2-foot wedges. You'd cut, and you'd hew these wedges by hand. And sometimes it would take most of a day to fall one of those big cedars with a crosscut saw, cutting and then wedging.
Yeah.
And you used an 8 or a 10-pound hammer, Bayman.
Yeah.
So you had to be pretty strong to be able to wield one of those hammers. And it was really labor intensive. It took a lot of work. And then once you got that tree down, you limbed it, you cut it into lengths, and then skidded it. And some of them were so big that you had to rig block and tackle, and then hook on that with the horses, with a team of horses to pull it. And you would only move it so far, and then you'd have to reset.
So those big cedars and the lumber like that you cut after that fire and everything, did they go to a shingle, or poles, or what were they used? Lumber, clear
Poles, lumber, shingles, shakes, you name it.
You name it.
Fence posts, a lot of them.
Yeah, cedar, right?
Yeah.
Dad used to haul fence posts from here with a 4-horse team to the Salmo.
Wow. Okay, so talk about the moving these big trees with lots of times with block and tackle and stuff. I mean, did your dad have to build all that stuff, like all that rigging and all that stuff, or could you buy that somewhere?
You could buy it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Most of the hardware stores carried that sort of thing.
Right.
In early days, you had to bring it in yourself from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, from either Spokane or across the line or
Right.
wherever it was available from.
Well, now, like Henry's dad and his partners were building wagons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, did your family, did they sell wagons in this area as well, or was there a wagon maker in Salmo, or where did wagons come from?
When they were involved when our folks were involved in hauling, they had to. This was before Henry's time or before his dad's time. I think they had to send to places like Wisconsin, and I think there is a foundry in Medicine Hat. Places like that.
Mm-hmm.
And
the machinery part of the wagon would come in, and then you would probably build the wood parts when you got here.
Yes. Yeah, it was the things that needed to be cast in a foundry that you had to send out for, and they came in by rail, and then you had to transport them out here. Most everything was transported on pack horses to begin with.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. Pretty amazing, isn't it?
Those 2 wheels that are sitting down there, Dad and his brother packed that up from the Bernarene on pack horses.
They were from a steam boiler that was brought into the Bernarene for the strike in about after 1854.
Mm-hmm.
And it would have been interesting to have seen how they got that thing in there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm always amazed that when you go up in the woods to see the equipment that's there. And we have a photo of freighting big boilers up to the Silver King, up to 6,000 feet, with these big 6 and 8 horse teams.
Right.
It's really pretty amazing.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's that famous picture of carrying that cable for you know, for the
Up at
tramway.
Ferguson.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it was just
Yeah.
horse after horse after
Yeah.
horse. Doing that.
See, when the Silver King was first developing, Granddad packed in there with a pack train, and I believe it was it the summer of '94 when they had that bad storm? Caslow was almost wiped out, and so on. That was one summer he was packing into the Silver King mine.
Wow.
And of course there was big timber there at that time, and he was on his way up with a load, and the wind blew a bunch of these big trees down, and it just fenced them right in. They couldn't go forward, they couldn't go backward, and he had to leave the horses where they were and make his way through all these windfalls up to the mine, get the mine crew, and they had to cut their way back to the pack train to get them out.
Wow.
And luckily no tree came down on top of them. It was a miracle.
Wow. Yeah, you just don't think of the, you know, that now you can get a power saw or a cat and pull something out, and it just it's the whole labor intensive thing.
Well, Granddad was an expert axeman.
Yeah.
And he often just packed an axe rather than.
Would you describe the saws that you used with your dad when you were, you know, clearing here after the fire and that? What kind of saws were you using?
Crosscut saws.
With two men or?
Two or one, whatever the case may be.
Right. And how do you keep that sort of? Is that the kind with their little?
Yeah, the teeth are about 2 inches long.
Right.
Sure.
So every night, like after you've cut trees, do you have to sharpen them all the time?
Oh yeah.
So that's a whole nother job.
Sure, that's all part of the logging business.
You had to do that after your work. And when you were cutting some timber, you had to carry a bottle of coal oil with you because the saw would gum up as it pulled back and forth through and you had to wipe it down with coal oil to keep it from binding up.
Okay, and then for the limbing, taking what did you use for that? An axe mostly?
A double bitted axe. In fact, I used to have a 5-pounder for breaking them big tamarack knots.
And then what other equipment would you need? What else is there?
Axes, saws, and
wedges. Oh, a peavy, I guess, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, peavy or candle, whichever you prefer.
Could you describe those? What's a cant hook?
Well, it's a hook that you have a pole about 4 feet long, and this hook works on the end of the, what should I say?
Well, there's what would you describe that as? The piece that
there's a peavy handle.
It's like a ferrule.
A socket.
A socket, yeah.
And what is that used? Do you hook it onto the log?
You use that for rolling logs or pinching, whatever.
Okay, and then the peavy is for rolling them.
Yes.
Yeah. Did you ever use the river, or is it for moving logs?
We didn't have to because the using the river wouldn't be to
any
advantage right here.
Yeah.
Oh, the wrong way.
Yeah.
Oh, right, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in other areas, they used flumes. They utilized the stream and had it running through a flume and moved the logs that way.
Right. In high water, they'd haul them all to the flume, and then in high water they would let them down.
No, they had usually on Porcupine and at Boulder and different places like that. The stream was
clear water.
Clear water.
the stream was sufficient that they could use them all year round.
Oh, wow.
And they just ran the whole stream, most of the whole stream right through the flume. And
on Porcupine, there were several people who died in the fire. They jumped in the flume to figure they were safe, and a tree fell across the flume and
cut the water off,
and they were just cremated.
Ooh. Yeah, I think there were 3.
Wow.
But it was an excellent way of moving timber.
Mm-hmm.
It was so practical, When you had to use horses for skidding, they just can't go the distance.
Mm-hmm.
And so they use that method for
hauling to the out of the flume and then or to places on the flume and then just load it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the flume would end at a pond at the mill.
Yeah.
And it was really a good way of doing it.
Right. Yeah. They had up on Sproul Creek. They flumed lumber down
That
to the
too.
the cut lumber. They moved the mill 3 times up the river and did that.
Yeah.
So, did you work in other logging operations besides with your dad? You're talking about working with a fire in the 50s and stuff like that.
I worked for Hearn Brothers for 13 years. Build roads in the summertime and try to keep them open in the winter. Do a little logging in between times.
So they had a mill operating out of Salmo? They were a Salmo operation?
They've had several. They had one on McCormick Creek, one down here at the junction, one in Park Siding, and one back up in the hills. Then Atco bought them out and rebuilt the mill. Well, it burned anyway, didn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
And they got some more modern equipment.
But Bayman started out in the horse logging when he was a kid.
Yeah.
And when he was 15, he was driving a big team of Shires that weighed a ton apiece. Tell them about those horses, Bayman.
We were camped at South Fork, and you had to go to the river to water your horses. And I brought the team over and watered them and dropped the lines and run into the cookhouse to get my lunch bucket. And there were some U.S. tourists there. And I heard this woman say to her husband, "My goodness, look at that little boy driving such a big team." I was highly insulted. I thought I was quite a guy.
So you'd been around horses all your life, so you're very familiar with them and didn't have any trouble driving them. Yeah. Do you have any hairy experiences driving a team?
Oh, once in a while.
Must have had the odd runaway.
Yes, we had that.
I can imagine driving a team on some of these mountain roads must have been really something,
Yeah.
Henry was telling me about how they used to lock the wheels with chains sometimes.
Sure.
Rough locks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, how would the horse hold it back? Well, I guess that's what you did.
They can only hold so much.
Yeah.
Yes. And they used to have to use those on the sleighs too.
Yeah.
When it
Did
got
you drive sleighs too?
Yes,
Wow.
not too much, but I've done it.
Because our woods aren't hard and crispy for a long time in the winter. They get really soggy and wet.
They do now.
Yeah.
They do now. Our climate has changed a lot.
Do you think that's because we've got so much more cleared?
I don't know. Part of it, I think, is because of the reservoirs backed up by the dams. That's when it really started to change.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So tell me about where your father sold, like where your grandfather sold some of the things that you know that were built with timber that he cut? Like you told me about the bridge in Salmo. Do you know some other things that for sure that his timber was used for?
Oh, the rest of it was just shipped out and you didn't know where it went.
Lot to the prairies at the time when the prairies were developing, probably.
Sure.
Most likely, yeah.
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 And for, I should say, fence posts for farms and ranches and stuff in Alberta, I guess, and in East Kootenays even.
We shipped thousands and thousands and thousands of fence posts out of here after the fire. That was the main winter's work for a long time, was cutting the dry cedars down and splitting them up, and there was, as Bayman said, it was put on a railway car and shipped out, and you didn't know where it went to, kind of thing.
What kind of, you mentioned some prices. Can you, like, what kind of, the price your dad got and your grandpa got, okay, how much?
Well, in the hungry 30s, they used to log it, saw it, into timbers for the mine, and haul it and deliver it for $15 a thousand.
Wow.
No, you wouldn't start the truck up for that.
No.
That's right.
Wow. So the margin of making a living, really.
If you could keep your head above water at all, you thought you were lucky.
The minute you started to have, I guess, trucks and machinery and just amazing.
Yeah. You grew as much in a garden and put away as much as you could. We never figured that we had a winter supply till we had 500 or 600 jars of vegetables and whatever put down. And we had our own meat. We used to run up to 200 head of cattle at one time. And then later on we had a dairy. But it was always
touch and go.
Touch and go.
Yeah.
You only bought what you absolutely had to have, and made do, made over, manufactured. Dad used to go to work. If a piece of machinery broke down, why, he'd go to the forge and redo it or rebuild or build something else or whatever.
Never threw anything away.
Never. That's why we have such a junkyard down there.
Oh, right. Sure.
But there's some interesting artifacts there.
Yeah.
They've been through the fire, but
right. Wow.
But you never threw anything away.
Okay, you were talking this morning when we first came about talking to game warden. I was thinking about the Forest Service and those people. I mean, do you remember having dealings with them? Do you remember them being around? Do you remember their guidelines and seeing, or problems with them, or whether cooperation with them or whatever? Anything about that?
Well, to begin with, there wasn't really an established Forest Service or anything. Yeah. Granddad was the forest ranger.
Oh, okay.
He was, Clarksons had these big limits and so on, and he was their administrator. He was the one that looked after them. And God help anybody that he caught cutting timber that on Clarkson's property that they didn't have permission to do or something like that. If Cliff McIntosh told the story about after his dad died and so on, his mother was having a tough time, had family to raise and so on, and they needed wood, and Granddad just told him to go and cut the wood, but anybody that wasn't authorized to, and he believed in not cutting too close to watersheds and all this sort of thing, and figured that the Nelson watershed should never be cut and all this sort of thing. And
you described an earlier person before we got onto the tape who seemed to be able to get what he wanted by just greasing the right palms. And I was wondering if you're aware that there was a lot of this, or was this the exception? Or were there a lot of people who could buy whatever they wanted and get their way to do things?
I don't say
in this area.
Yeah, I don't say there was a lot, but there were a couple that certainly operated that way, and they were completely unscrupulous. They had no qualms about. All they thought about was how to get what they wanted. Didn't matter who they walked on, kind of thing. And it was they were known for that sort of thing, so you just watched out for them.
Well, and I think in the early days there was, the Forest Service started in 1912, and there would be one ranger for each area, and George Palethorpe had the whole lardo, and this kind of thing, that it would be very hard. You'd have to rely on your spy system, the local residents who really loved the country, to keep you informed about things that were going on. I mean, otherwise how would you know, right?
Yeah.
What was going on.
It's surprising how those guys managed to cover the country. They had a good network, and they managed to, they were good woodsmen, and they varied their routine, so
could surprise you.
Yeah.
And of course, you can't hide the evidence if you've done something wrong. It's easy enough to see.
That's right.
Well, it used to be them fire wardens and what have you. They knew the woods as well as you did. Nowadays, you try to get anything through to these knuckleheads with a college education, and
they don't have practical experience.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah.
Lots of theory.
Yes.
Right now, you gotta either go to Castlegar or phone them or get permission from Castlegar, and they don't even know where you're at when you tell them.
You're in that
Forest District.
Forest District, I see.
And
you have a setup in Salmo.
Right.
And all you had to do was call them up and tell them you were going to burn. Okay, we'll drop a card in the mail for you.
Yeah, drop a permit in the mail.
That's all there was to it. Now these guys, they got to come and tell you how to pilot and when and how.
And you know more about it than they do. So it's rather frustrating. But
it's a lot more red tape now.
Oh, nothing else but.
Nothing else but. Yeah. And you were talking about conservation officer.
it used to be that people around were more afraid of Dad than they were of the game warden, because Dad would take them by the shirt front and.
Okay, so we were talking about the rotters and cut out
and the river.
and the river. So can you tell that again?
Okay. Do you want me to start from the beginning?
Go if you wouldn't mind going back.
Okay. Did you get the part where I talked about how he got his first?
No. If you would, I went back right to the beginning.
Oh, you did. Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. All right. He came in from across the border. Things were getting a little hot for him there, and he put everything in his wife's name, so they couldn't touch him, and he came in here. And you said he started out by taking some poles out, Bayman?
Poles and white pine on a hidden creek.
Then there were some of the elderly men who had no other means of earning a living. They kept on working long past their time. They had to try to get enough to survive on, actually, is what it meant, because there was no welfare, there was no UI, no anything.
No old man's home in Salmo area.
Nothing that could support them.
Yeah.
I mean, you were on your own.
Yeah.
And so they would make a few fence posts, or they would try to make a few poles and, get enough for groceries kind of thing. Most of them lived out in a little 10 by 10 cabin or something like that, just enough for shelter and a bed and a stove kind of thing. And that's how they lived. And so some of them worked for Rotter, and he saw that they were getting beyond working, and he put insurance policies on a few of them. And when they passed on to their just rewards, he collected the insurance and used that money to buy equipment and a truck, and went from there. And so as time went on, he did fairly well for himself. And in the did we say when it was after the fire, after the 1934 fire, that he built that first sawmill out there?
Yeah.
And he had some of a lot of the Doukhobor people that had come into the area. He had them working for him, and he would sell them clothes and groceries and this sort of thing. And but the problem was that the balance always ended up where they owed him instead of him owing them. And it wasn't that way every month, but it was that way pretty often. And he would, if they got too far ahead, why, he would say, well, you can give me some of those cattle in payment and this sort of thing. And that's how he got started in the cattle business, and how he came to buy this property over here, and how he came to buy the property up at Boulder.
Okay, and you mentioned a mill. Where was his mill that he had?
The mill was near the mouth of Sheep Creek.
Oh, okay.
And so he just went on from there. Well, in the late 30s, he bought the property over across the river from us here, and was doing some logging there. He hired Dad and Bayman to log some white pine. When he first came in here, as a matter of fact, he came to Dad and wanted to know where such and such timber would be, and Dad helped him out and this sort of thing, as you always did. And it made it doubly, what should I say? Anyway, it was pretty annoying when he turned out to be the person that he was. Anyway,
was that white pine for the matchbox?
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were thousands and thousands of feet of white pine went out of here, out of across the river, up Lost Creek, all these valleys were logged for white pine. It was selective logged with horses, and that's why people were able to go back in later years and harvest the other timber that came along. Anyway, he decided to build a bridge across there, and
Out here
at the north border of our property, where the river was very narrow. It was an ideal, at that time at least, it was an ideal spot to build this bridge. So they went together and built the bridge, each supplying some material, and Dad and Bayman did the work. And
We didn't do all the work. He had a crew there too.
yeah, well, you did a good part of the work, and anyway, it was supposed to be so that everybody could use this bridge. Both outfits could use the bridge.
Why would you be wanting to go there?
Well, because our cattle used to range across both sides of the river, and sometimes they would get foolish and swim it in high water, and then you were stuck to go and get them.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So it was convenient to be able to go across there. And then a bit later, he sent Dad a register letter saying that he couldn't use the bridge, and about this time he blew the wing jams out protecting our property and changed the course of the river, thinking that if he changed the course of the river, it would change our border, and he could nab that land and the timber on it.
And you didn't, before you would do something like that, didn't you have to ask? I mean, you just did it?
Well, he just did it.
I see. Wow.
Yeah. So it was theft on a grand scale.
Yeah.
And when Dad discovered what had happened, he went into the water rights people in Nelson, and they were aghast. They were just horrified. Oh, he would have to put the river back. Rotter would have to put the river back where it belonged, and pay damages, and this couldn't be. In the meantime, Rotter made a trip to Victoria and put a couple of cases of whiskey in the right place and whatever else was necessary, and the next thing we knew, Dad was told that it was a civil matter. It would have to be between him and Rotter.
You mean that the province was not going to protect the waterways?
That's right.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But you see, this was back in the 40s.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, you can imagine that was pretty devastating because we were losing a lot of land there.
Yeah.
And we knew that there was no use trying to take it to court, because anybody who had taken Rotter to court in the past over injustices had ended up losing. You just lost faith in the system altogether, and he was the one who could afford to hire smart lawyers, and what were you going to do? So we didn't, having been
we've been losing ever since.
Yeah, we've been losing ever since. You're right, Bayman.
Yeah.
And you just, we were recovering from that fire. There was no way that we had any money to fight a battle like that. So we just had to take our lumps.
So how much acres, how much timber was involved that you lost? Did you subsequently see him log it all?
No, he didn't get a chance to log it all because Dad and Bayman went across the river with they harnessed the team separately and built sloops to put fence posts on. Went over there, cut the timber down, made fence posts, and brought them in sloops back across the river. And Rotter was telling everybody how they weren't going to get away with that and his land and so on and so forth. He had already tried to claim it, only it wasn't his land, and we've proved since that it wasn't, and so on. But anyway, they cut the timber and brought the fence posts back across to this side. And Dad used to ride the one horse with the rifle over the hame.
Wow.
And old Rotter and one of his employees were up on the bridge watching, but they weren't going to tackle Dad, especially with a rifle. But that's what it took in those days to protect what you had.
Yeah. So since then, that's a major change in the river then.
Yes, and it's still affecting us. Even 2 years ago, it changed course again, and it's kept changing course over the years since he blew the jams out. And to begin with, it came right in along the highway soon after he blew the protecting bank and the log jams and everything out. And at that point, Department of Highways put a dam or a
dike.
A dike is the word I'm searching for. To put the river, out from the highway, but that still wasn't restoring it to where it had gone to begin with. And we've lost over 50 acres. It's washed out gravel now instead of being timber and farmland.
Wow.
And it's still threatening more. So we've up until the last year or so, the Fish and Wildlife wouldn't let you do anything about it. The water rights people wouldn't let you do anything about it. But now they seem to be taking a more enlightened view of things and are realizing that when that river changes course, it ruins fish habitat. Excuse me. So that now they would rather see the river stabilized. So thank goodness for that.
So they're going to do something? Or have they done something?
No, they'll let us do it at our cost.
But at least they'll let you do something.
Well, that's the way it sounds. I've still to deal with the water rights people, so I'll probably have to go in there and talk to them.
So that's not the only time that you have had to defend yourselves with a gun?
Oh,
your rights?
No. When I was, we've both packed rifles from the time we were kids and knew how to use them. But it was just a matter of dealing with belligerent hunters and people who were coming on your property to stake claims and all that sort of thing. Or even some had the nerve to try and cut down timber and all that's, just the general run of the mill.
Right. Wow.
But Dad always drilled us in gun safety and never use a gun unless you had to, and but lots of times it was a good deterrent.
Right. Were there ever native people here?
No.
You don't remember your grandfather? The during the 1870s when the Northwest Indian Wars were on, the Kalispels apparently hid out in the area north of the border, around around the Pend Oreille there.
Yes.
I always wondered if they came up here too.
Well, possibly they did, but there really wasn't much evidence of it. But
I never saw an Indian until this Crescent Road. Where we started going hunting over in East Kootenay.
But they really didn't have to come into this area very much. It was heavily timbered, and when it came to fishing or anything like that, there were other areas that were more accessible to them.
The big fish used to come up this river as far as they could go.
Till they ran out of water.
After they built the Grand Coulee Dam, why that wound that up.
Yeah, the big spring salmon used to come up in here.
Did your grandfather talk about seeing them?
Oh,
here?
yes.
Wow.
Yes, Dad too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Grand Coulee's in the 30s, right? Built in the 30s?
I think so. What about the Bonneville? Was that built before that?
I believe it was after.
Maybe it was after. Well, anyway, the first dam on the Columbia, the fish came no more.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about logging machinery. Like you have a really nice. You had a nice picture of a truck that people used, and you said it was Caddy Donaldson's truck, using it for pulling out logs and stuff. Do you remember the first uses of machinery rather than horses and wagons and stuff around here?
Well, it just gradually sneaked up on us.
There was a fellow by the name of McDonald that was logging out here, wasn't there? He had 2 trucks.
He had 4.
4?
S.J. McDonald.
Yes.
He hauled all the lumber out of Lost Creek when they run that sawmill up there, and hauled poles and whatnot. He was a big time operator, but he soon went broke.
Yeah. He was one that went broke and left my father hanging for about $500 or $600.
Yes, I don't doubt it.
And that was quite an amount in those days.
Yeah.
He had what?
What kind
did
of
he have
truck
2 Lelands?
What?
Did he have 2 Lelands?
1 Leland, a Kelly Springfield, and 2 Federals.
Oh yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
And what year are we talking about here? In the 30s? Early?
No, the 20s.
In the 20s.
Yeah.
25 or 6, somewhere in there. Solid tire trucks.
Yeah, we used to change the tires in the shop.
Sure.
Who maintained these vehicles? Did they have mechanics that worked in the camp, or?
I don't really know. I couldn't say for sure. There was mechanics scattered around the country, but
well, usually the owners did most of the
repairs.
Work themselves.
Well, Donaldson did a lot of the work too, didn't he?
Did he have a garage?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
McDonald?
Donaldson, Caddy.
Oh, yeah, Caddy had the garage.
Caddy had some horses and like a dray business and that sort of thing, and went from there to trucks and cats and you name it.
Yeah. Another person that lived out here was Archie Bremner
Yes.
Yeah, he lived in Salmo.
in Salmo, and he had the first. Actually brought the first car into Nelson.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did he deal with trucks too?
No.
No. Who had a stage that went from Sheep Creek? Is that Donaldson? It was a car.
Oh, yes. Yes, he did.
Donaldson and I can't remember now. There were several different outfits
Yeah.
tried it.
Okay, so who would work in somebody like this Donaldson? Who would work in his mill? What, men from around the area? Would he bring in people? Like,
Well, he didn't have a mill.
oh, he just had logging outfit.
No, he didn't have.
No,
a
you're talking about McDonald.
McDonald, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
McDonald
Yes, J.
had-
McDonald.
Yeah, S.J. McDonald had the trucks that hauled the
Lumber out of.
well, it was, this lumber was cut to size so it could be chopped into match blocks. This was all white pine going to the match block factory
Okay.
They run that
in
mill
Nelson.
for 2 years, and all they cut was white pine.
Wow.
Who operated that mill at Boulder?
The which?
The mill at Boulder.
Oh, I don't know who. That is,
Or was it a sawmill?
there was a sawmill at Boulder, but who owned it, or I don't know. I was a pretty small kid when that operated.
So why did he go broke, this McDonald?
Well, he probably borrowed money to buy the equipment and lived high off the hog, and the money, instead of going back into the equipment, went into his pocket. And the usual pitfalls. But what about the fellow that? Let me see. Did the guy go to repair the mill or some of McDonald's machinery or what? He rode up with the truck driver at night, and then when he went to come down, he pretty near had a fit when he saw the road in daylight on Lost Creek.
Working on the Leland.
Oh, he was working on the Leland.
Yeah, that was the newest truck, and he still had a warranty on
Oh, I see. So they sent a man out from the factory.
it. Yeah.
That's right.
Oh, wow.
Something like that, yeah. And he went up. But he went up there at night, Bayman?
Went up at night and he did the work on the truck. And he thought he'd make a trip with the driver and see that it was working okay. And when he come down in daylight with a load, why, when he got a look at the road, he never went back.
There was no way he was going back up and down again.
He says, "You can ship them tools to me, but I'm not going to get them myself."
So those early logging trucks driving on those roads must have been something.
Oh, you want to believe.
I mean, they didn't have 14 gears and like they do today.
They didn't, some of them didn't even have a cab.
No, the Leland was the only one that had a cab.
Yeah, the others didn't have a cab.
Well, how did it work?
You were right out in the weather.
They were so slow in high gear you could run up the road and tell them to get out of the way.
If you wanted to pass, because the road was so narrow.
To go by.
The kids would be, if you got behind one of those pole trucks or logging trucks or whatever they were hauling, and or lumber trucks, and the kids had to get out and run through the dust and everything to catch up to the guy to tell them to move over so that or stop at a turnout so they could get by.
Right. Wow. Did any of them, I mean, you don't hear about them running away on these roads.
No.
Must have been fabulous drivers, when you think about it.
you either the first mistake was your last.
Yeah.
That's right.
Dad used to make 3 trips a day from Salmo to Rosebud Lake hauling lumber with that old Federal.
Yeah, if you put the brakes on in the hill, it didn't do anything for you at all. The only place the brakes had worked on the level.
Sure.
You just put it in a low gear and prayed.
We were going up to the, I guess it was the Emerald with a Model T Ford, and we met one of his trucks coming down. And Dad had to throw the old Model T in reverse and back down as fast as he could. And he turned off on a spot, and there was a rock there. We high centered on the spot, and the truck went on by. And we had to build up pieces of wood underneath the wheels of the old Model T to get it off this rock. That road was like that.
That was a common thing.
Did your dad have close calls driving?
Oh, yes.
All the time, I bet.
Lots of them.
Wow.
Lots of them.
I mean, we talk about wagons and horses and rough locking, but I mean, at least you get a chance of stopping. I mean,
yeah, as long as your team didn't run away.
Wow.
No, them old trucks that had no windshield, no cab. You just sat out there and took her.
Yeah.
Did you drive trucks too?
Eh?
Did you drive trucks too?
Not the solid tired ones.
No. I'm going to turn this off.
I come along
Okay,
behind them.
Right, so you talked about white pine and some of these people cutting white pine.
No, that ain't it.
That's not it?
But they also cut cottonwood.
Yes.
And
Out of the near plant in Nelson where the mall is.
right. And they cut cottonwood along the Salmo River, along all the areas where
Sure.
yeah. And loaded. You said 2 logs, so it was a load.
Yep. 9-foot log.
Wow. And they take it into Salmo and put it on the train.
Yep.
It was offloaded into the yard, and then it would be pulled together with a gin pole, lifted and loaded on the cars.
Right.
And it would have to be loaded with a gin pole in the woods when they loaded it on a truck as well, because there was no loaders or anything of that kind.
Right.
And a gin pole was a setup with an upright pole buried in the ground with a pole that was attached at the bottom, but it swung.
Uh-huh.
It would describe an arc, and it would go up and down. And they would, through a pulley system, move that pole, lower it to put tongs in the ends of a log, and then raise it up and swing it and put it on a truck or a railway car or whatever.
Right.
And that was the first high-ab, if you will.
They also supplied firewood for like bakeries and places like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was it cut into stove lengths? Or?
It was cut into 4-foot lengths.
That's,
Right.
That's the way they haul it.
And did they ever supply for the brickyard? Because those guys used to buy wood too, I think.
I don't know.
You don't know about that. Somebody told me that they had supplied wood to the brickyard.
Yes,
Oh,
they
that's
would
right.
probably do that locally.
Yeah. And then they'd make the bricks and then they'd fire them sort of over a couple of weeks in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right behind where the Millburn house is in Fairview, on 1st Street, between 1st and 2nd Street,
Mm-hmm.
that was the
Hancock.
brickyard, and that's where he got the clay to make his bricks from.
Yeah. And there was water there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what they did. They would make all the bricks and then they would have a
There's a
fire.
big grizzly that Dad got here.
Wow.
He's 14 inches between the butts of ears.
Was he bothering the family?
No, he was killing cattle.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it like when they hauled this cordwood into Nelson for various, like the bakery and places like that, was after the road went through. Because before that, the only way in was by railway and a pack trail.
Right.
Yeah.
You're mentioning some of the other lumbermen in the area. F.J. McDonald.
He was the one that owned the truck. And
all tire truck
right.
all over Alaska.
Yeah.
And then was the other another gentleman that was out here. Oh, you said he was quite a decent type, but later got to drinking.
Beach Campbell.
Oh, Beach Campbell. Can you tell me a
yeah.
little bit about him?
Well, Beach was quite a character, and he was involved in logging and sawmilling for many years, and for a while he was in part of the later years he was in partnership with Jim Hearn. They had a few little operations going, and but Beach was a bachelor for most of his life until he got tangled up with a lady from Spokane who took him for all the money that he had. But Beach, he was quite an affable old character, and one story I remember about him, he was everybody was going on about, with the improvement in the roads, we're going to have lots of tourists in here, and it'll help everybody, and so on. Old Beach looks around and he said, "Huh, who the hell can eat tourists?" he said. He was more interested in things that brought in cold hard cash, like logs and lumber.
Right.
More tangible things.
Right.
Where the heck is that?
So,
picture?
which truck is that, Bayman?
That's the old solid-tired Republic of Donaldson.
Oh, that's the Republic. And it's the Dodge Graham that you want.
Kelly Springfield.
Or the Kelly Springfield.
Kelly Springfield is what I want.
Yeah,
That McDonald was standing alongside the truck. And our aunt from England has never seen a big outfit like that. Mum got her picture.
Well, I'll have to search for it.
What happened to these mill sites, like after these mills closed down? I mean, were they like mining camps, or they just walked out and left everything there, or did they move everything out, or?
They did it any way and every way.
Yeah.
There's no set rule to it.
Sometimes if they were able to sell the machinery, that went, and then they tore the buildings down and relocated or reused them for something else, or people took
Salvaged them.
Salvaged them.
Yeah. Did most
There
of
we
them
are.
have bunkhouses?
Yeah, they had camps right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had cookhouse and bunkhouse and
That's it, is it?
yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
So we're looking at a picture of a kind of truck is this?
Kelly Springfield.
That's huge. Wow. How long are those logs? There's a picture of a truck, a Kelly Springfield truck with huge load of log poles on it. Really big. Would those be cedar poles? Or tamarack poles? Or? Do you remember?
Come again?
What kind of poles would those be?
Cedar pole.
Cedar poles. They're long and straight, beautiful poles.
Yeah.
How is the load attached to the truck? With chains?
Yes.
There were no stakes to hold them.
You just had your corner binds to build to.
You chained the first log down and
Right.
built from there.
Right. So you didn't have like almost like a fence, a metal fence up on the sides like they do today.
No.
So you must. Did you ever lose a load?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, quite often.
Yeah. And those were all loaded with like there's on this picture are about what, a dozen logs on this truck, dozen poles.
And all of that.
Yeah.
And
a load would probably be about 20.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's loaded with a gin pole?
A gin pole.
Wow.
All the heavy lifting had to be done with a gin pole set up because there was just no other means. You know, there was no hydraulic type high-abs like they have nowadays.
It was a hand winch. It was winched by hand.
Yeah, or in this case it was horses.
Oh yeah.
Used horses on a cross haul.
How long would those poles be?
Maybe up to 50 feet or better.
Yeah. And this is at a pole yard because there are in the background many more poles that look just as good and just as long.
Yeah.
Was that a job somebody had to peel them?
Oh
Absolutely.
yeah, that was a big job.
That was a big job.
They were hand peeled in the woods.
Okay.
And you tried to make poles. You tried to make as many as you could. When the bark would slip easily.
So, and then these were shipped off and treated, I guess, far away. They used to send them to the States to be creosoted, didn't they?
They went all over the world, I think.
Yeah. I remember.
A lot of them weren't
treated.
Some of them would be treated just where it went into the ground. They would dip them.
Yeah, in creosote. Yeah, that was the most treatment at that time that most of them got.
Were most of these for telegraph and telephone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Who were the pole companies that operated here?
Noggle pole, bell pole.
Bell pole.
What else?
P.J. Carney.
P.J. Carney.
Yes.
They were the main ones. This is McDonald. It says J. McDonald standing here, the owner of these.
There's your $500 worth.
Why are you laughing? I don't understand.
Well, this is the fellow that left the country owing Henry's dad all the money.
There's the only one.
There's the picture. There's his picture.
I see. Okay.
And that woman in the picture, that's mother's sister, come from the old country.
So they took her to see some timber.
Yeah.
Well, she'd never seen a big truck like that, and
I guess these could be, like we were talking about, that your great-grandfather was involved in the mast business.
Yeah, that
would be
type
the
of
sort of tree, wouldn't it?
That's
that would have
right.
been used for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes a special stand of timber to be able to. Yeah.
Are there any stands of timber like that left in the Salmo Valley?
no.
No, not in this